Ladies and gentlemen, respected teachers, elders, and my dear friends, today I stand before you to speak on a subject that is both fascinating and thought-provoking. Must see this warning before new moon. The phases of the moon have always guided human life, from ancient traditions to modern science. Among these phases, the new moon holds a unique significance. Unlike the full moon, where the sky is illuminated, the new moon represents a moment of darkness, a reset in the lunar cycle, and a time often associated with mystery, silence, and new beginnings. But with it also comes a reminder, a warning, that we must understand. Throughout history, the new moon has been connected to cycles of renewal, reflection, and preparation. Ancient civilizations believed that during the new moon, energy shifts and the unseen forces of nature grow stronger. Farmers would plan their sowing and harvesting around it. Travelers would wait for the return of moonlight to guide their paths, and spiritual seekers would use the silence of the dark sky for meditation and introspection. The warning here is clear. Do not ignore the quiet lessons of the new moon. It reminds us that just as the moon disappears for a while, so too must we learn to pause, reflect, and prepare for growth. But in today's world, many of us are caught up in endless noise, distractions, and speed. We forget the importance of silence, patience, and self-examination. The warning before the new moon is not one of fear, but of awareness. It tells us to stop running endlessly and take a moment to align with ourselves. Just as nature balances light and darkness, we too must learn to balance action with rest, ambition with reflection, and words with silence. The new moon is also a time of beginnings. What you think, plan, or set into motion during this period often shapes the days that follow. Therefore, the warning is also about responsibility. Be careful with your thoughts, your intentions, and your choices at this time, because the seeds you plant in the darkness will eventually grow into your reality. This is why traditions across the world, from Eastern philosophies to native practices, consider the new moon as sacred. My friends, the greatest warning before the new moon is to not waste it. Do not waste its lesson of quiet strength. Do not waste the chance to reset your mind, body, and soul. The new moon asks us to let go of what no longer serves us and prepare for what lies ahead. If we neglect this reminder, we risk carrying old burdens into new beginnings, repeating cycles that should have been broken, and missing the chance to grow into something better. So as the next new moon approaches, remember this warning. Pause, reflect, and reset. Use the stillness of the night to plant seeds of positivity, wisdom, and courage. Embrace the darkness not as an end, but as a powerful beginning. And when the moonlight returns, let it shine upon the best version of yourself. 1. Ancient civilizations used the new moon for farming, travel, and spiritual practices. 2. The warning of the new moon is about pausing, reflecting, and preparing. 3. Modern life distracts us from silence, patience, and balance. 4. Thoughts and intentions during the new moon shape the days ahead. 5. The new moon is a time to release old burdens and plant new seeds. 6. Embrace the darkness as a beginning, not an end. The new moon, unlike the full moon that brightens the night sky with its radiant glow, symbolizes darkness, renewal, and new beginnings. It is a moment in the lunar cycle when the moon is hidden from our eyes, invisible yet profoundly significant. In this quiet stage of the cycle, the moon teaches us something that is often overlooked in life, that every ending is also a beginning, and every moment of stillness holds the promise of transformation. The absence of light is not a sign of loss, but an invitation to reset, to prepare, and to embrace the possibilities that lie ahead. Darkness may seem intimidating, but it is also fertile ground for growth. Just as seeds must be buried in the soil away from the light before they sprout into life, the new moon symbolizes a period of preparation before emergence. When we look at the symbolism of the new moon, we see a powerful metaphor for the human journey. Every one of us goes through phases, much like the moon. Sometimes we are bright and visible, full of energy and confidence, and at other times we are quiet, introspective, and hidden. The new moon encourages us to honor this cycle of life rather than resist it. It tells us that it is okay to retreat for a while, to sit with our thoughts, to acknowledge endings, and to prepare for new beginnings. Renewal cannot come without first passing through a moment of stillness, and this is what the new moon represents. Throughout history, many cultures and traditions have revered the new moon as a sacred time. In some spiritual practices, the new moon is seen as a time to let go of the past and to set intentions for the future. People would gather in ceremonies, not under bright moonlight, but under the veil of darkness, believing that their prayers, hopes, and intentions carried special weight during this time. The new moon was not feared but celebrated, for it symbolized the chance to start again. It became a natural calendar for renewal, a marker of fresh opportunities, and a reminder that life, like the lunar cycle, is constantly evolving. The darkness of the new moon is also symbolic of the unknown. Just as the night hides what our eyes cannot see, life often places us in situations where the path ahead is unclear. Yet, the lesson of the new moon is not to fear this uncertainty, but to trust it. Beginnings often come wrapped in darkness. A new job, a new relationship, or a new chapter in life may feel overwhelming at first, but just like the moon slowly reveals its light, clarity comes with time. By accepting the new moon's message, we learn to approach change not with fear, but with hope. Renewal during the new moon is not only about external beginnings, but also about internal transformation. It is a time when one can reflect inwardly, release old habits or burdens, and choose to cultivate new values and goals. The moon may not be visible in the sky, but it is still there, quietly transitioning into its next phase. In the same way, when we step back, rest, and reflect, we are not lost. We are simply gathering strength for the journey ahead. The new moon shows us that growth is not always visible, but is always happening beneath the surface. Even in modern life, when technology and artificial lights blur the boundaries of natural cycles, the new moon still holds meaning. Many people practice mindfulness or meditation during this time, aligning themselves with the natural rhythm of the universe. The symbolism of renewal and new beginnings is timeless, reminding us that no matter how advanced or distracted our world becomes, we remain connected to nature's cycles. The lesson of the new moon is eternal. Endings are never final, and new beginnings always wait in the darkness. In its silence, the new moon whispers a truth that is vital for us to hear. That darkness is not the absence of life, but the birthplace of renewal. It symbolizes the chance to shed what no longer serves us, to embrace the unknown, and to set intentions that will grow and flourish as the moon begins to reveal its light once again. Ancient civilizations observed the skies not just for beauty, but for guidance, and the new moon held a special place in their lives. It was not merely a celestial event, but a signal for important decisions, rituals, and practices. For farmers, the new moon was like nature's calendar. They watched the moon carefully to decide when to sow their seeds, when to water, and when to expect growth. The dark phase of the moon was often seen as the most favorable time to plant, as the soil was believed to absorb energy more deeply in the absence of light, allowing the seeds to establish strong roots. Just as the hidden moon promised renewal, so too did the crops planted under its influence. Farmers trusted this natural rhythm, believing that what was begun in darkness would flourish when the light returned. In this way, the new moon became a symbol of patience, trust, and long-term growth. Travelers and sailors also relied on the phases of the moon, and the new moon was both a challenge and an opportunity. The lack of moonlight meant darker nights, which made navigation more difficult, yet it also brought clearer skies filled with stars. Ancient navigators learned to read these stars with greater precision during the new moon, allowing them to travel vast distances with remarkable accuracy. The new moon was not a time of fear for them, but rather a time to sharpen their skills and rely on the wisdom of the cosmos. They understood that the disappearance of the moonlight did not mean they were abandoned, but rather that they had to learn to trust other guiding lights. This lesson still resonates today, reminding us that even when one source of guidance seems absent, there are always others if we look closely enough. For spiritual seekers, the new moon was a sacred event. Many ancient traditions viewed it as a time when the veil between the human and the divine grew thinner. Without the brightness of the moon, the sky seemed quieter, the night more profound, and the atmosphere more suitable for prayer, meditation, and rituals. People used this time to let go of negative energies, cleanse themselves of burdens, and prepare their hearts and minds for new beginnings. Some cultures lit small lamps or fires as symbols of inner light, showing that even in darkness, humans can create hope and direction. The silence of the new moon night encouraged introspection, urging people to look within and align themselves with higher purposes. Legends and myths surrounding the new moon also reveal its importance. In some traditions, it was believed that spirits were more active during this time, testing the strength and purity of human intentions. In others, the new moon was considered a time of protection, where the absence of moonlight shielded communities from harmful forces. People crafted rituals, chants, and practices to honor this phase, each tradition carrying a unique interpretation of the moon's disappearance. Despite the differences, one theme remained constant. The new moon was never meaningless. It was always a moment of significance, a reminder of the cycles of life, and a call to awareness. Even calendars in ancient times were often structured around lunar cycles, with the new moon marking the start of a month. Festivals, harvest celebrations, and cultural events were aligned with this dark phase, giving it both social and spiritual relevance. Communities would gather together, not to fear the darkness, but to honor it as the beginning of something new. These collective practices reinforced unity, teaching societies that beginnings are best embraced together rather than alone. The new moon thus played a role not only in individual reflection, but in strengthening bonds within communities. The influence of the new moon on human life was profound because it served as a bridge between the physical and the spiritual, the practical and the symbolic. Farmers, travelers, priests, and common people alike all found meaning in its quiet disappearance. It was a teacher of patience, a guide for preparation, and a reminder that life's most powerful transformations often begin unseen. The wisdom of ancient civilizations shows us that the new moon was never just about darkness. It was about trust, renewal, and the promise of beginnings waiting to unfold. The warning before the new moon is not one meant to frighten, but one that calls us to awareness and reflection. Unlike the full moon, where the brightness and energy are high, the new moon cloaks the night in darkness and silence, demanding that we pause and listen more deeply. This pause is not inactivity, but a meaningful stillness, one that allows us to reconnect with ourselves and with the rhythm of life. It is a reminder that in the natural world, cycles of activity are always followed by cycles of rest. Just as the earth requires time to replenish, just as seeds must lie in the soil before they sprout, so too must we learn the importance of pausing before beginning again. The warning here is simple yet profound. If we ignore these natural moments of stillness, we risk exhausting ourselves and missing the wisdom that only quiet can bring. The new moon, shrouded in darkness, represents a stage of renewal, but renewal cannot come without preparation. This preparation is not about external activity alone, but about inner readiness. The warning before the new moon is to take stock of what has been, to let go of what weighs us down, and to create space for what is yet to come. Life constantly asks us to move forward, to chase goals, to pursue dreams, but if we do not pause to reflect, we may carry old burdens into new beginnings. This warning tells us that without reflection, renewal loses its power. The darkness of the new moon becomes a mirror, showing us the parts of ourselves that we might otherwise overlook in the busy brightness of life. In a world that celebrates constant movement and productivity, the message of the new moon often goes unheard. People are caught in endless cycles of doing, rushing from one task to the next, forgetting that growth also requires stillness. The warning before the new moon challenges this modern mindset. It calls us back to a balance where silence is not seen as weakness, but as strength, where reflection is not wasted time, but preparation for clarity. Just as the moon cannot shine without first going dark, human beings cannot achieve true progress without moments of quiet introspection. This is the hidden truth in the warning. Without stillness, our growth becomes shallow. Without awareness, our beginnings lose direction. The new moon is also a time when intentions carry great weight. Many traditions teach that what you focus on during the darkness of the new moon sets the stage for the weeks to come. The warning is therefore not only to pause, but to be careful about what you cultivate in your mind and heart at this time. Negative thoughts, unresolved grudges, and careless intentions can take root just as easily as positive ones. This phase of the moon urges us to plant seeds of hope, strength, and wisdom rather than those of fear or regret. The absence of light makes intentions even more significant, for they act as the inner light guiding the path forward. The warning reminds us that beginnings are fragile and must be nurtured with care. The power of this warning becomes clearer when we reflect on how nature itself operates. Rivers slow before they gather force, storms calm before skies clear, and even trees shed leaves before growing new ones. The new moon fits into this same natural wisdom. Its darkness is not emptiness but preparation. Ignoring it means going against the flow of life itself, forcing growth without renewal, chasing beginnings without closure. The warning before the new moon is not a punishment, but a chance to align ourselves with the rhythm of nature, to remember that everything has its time and season. For those who listen to this warning, the new moon becomes a gift. It is a reminder that endings and pauses are not final, but necessary steps toward new beginnings. It tells us to be mindful of what we release and intentional about what we begin. It warns us that without reflection, we repeat mistakes, and without stillness, we carry chaos into the future. Above all, it urges us to respect the cycle of darkness and light, for only when we learn to value both can we live in balance and harmony. In the fast-paced world of today, where constant activity is glorified and silence is often misunderstood as idleness, the true essence of balance is lost. The warning before the new moon becomes particularly relevant in such times, for it teaches us the value of patience, reflection, and the art of slowing down. Unlike the brightness of the full moon that pushes people to act and engage, the new moon cloaks the night in darkness and whispers of stillness. This stillness is not emptiness, but a call to return to ourselves, to rediscover the spaces of calm that we so often neglect. Modern life, with its endless distractions, technologies, and demands, pulls us away from our inner worlds. We are trained to respond instantly, to chase goals without pause, and to measure our worth by how much we achieve rather than how deeply we live. The warning of the new moon reminds us that silence has its own wisdom, that patience carries its own strength, and that balance between action and rest is essential for a meaningful life. When we ignore this message, we risk being consumed by the noise of modern living. Think about how rarely we allow ourselves moments of complete quiet. Phones buzz, screens glow, conversations never cease, and our minds are constantly fed with stimulation. The darkness of the new moon, however, reminds us that growth requires pauses. Just as a field cannot yield crops if it is never given time to rest, we cannot flourish if we do not give ourselves permission to slow down. The warning before the new moon is not to lose ourselves in the chaos, not to mistake endless activity for true progress, and not to forget that balance is a vital ingredient of fulfillment. Patience is another lesson tied to this warning. The new moon is a stage of the lunar cycle when nothing seems visible, yet much is happening beneath the surface. Similarly, in life, there are times when our efforts may not show immediate results, but that does not mean nothing is changing. Patience allows us to trust the unseen processes, to believe that growth often happens in silence before it becomes visible. In contrast, a restless, impatient mind seeks constant results and constant proof of progress, which often leads to frustration and burnout. The new moon's warning is that impatience blinds us to the deeper rhythms of life. It asks us to slow down, to accept that timing matters, and to recognize that the most meaningful transformations cannot be rushed. Reflection is also a vital part of this message. The absence of moonlight gives us an opportunity to look inward rather than outward. Instead of seeking external validation, the new moon encourages us to ask ourselves difficult questions. What have we been carrying that no longer serves us? What habits drain us instead of nourishing us? What relationships or situations need closure so that we can move forward freely? Modern life does not easily give space for such reflection, which is why the warning of the new moon is so important. If we fail to pause and reflect, we risk carrying unresolved pain, old mistakes, and unnecessary burdens into our new beginnings. This lack of awareness creates cycles of repetition, where the same struggles appear again and again because they were never properly addressed. Balance between light and darkness, action and rest, is the central teaching of the lunar cycle. The new moon represents the quiet half of this balance. Without acknowledging it, we tilt too far toward constant action and noise, which eventually leads to exhaustion. The warning before the new moon is to realign ourselves, to remember that just as the moon cannot shine all the time, we too are not meant to be in constant motion. Rest is not weakness, silence is not emptiness, and patience is not stagnation. They are necessary complements to action, sound, and ambition. In many ways, the new moon serves as a mirror to our times. It reflects how disconnected we have become from natural cycles and how much we need reminders to slow down. The darkness of the new moon is a gift, though it may feel unsettling. It strips away the distractions of light and forces us to sit with ourselves, to confront the truths we often avoid, and to find peace in the pause. Its warning is gentle but firm. Do not forget the wisdom of silence. Do not underestimate the power of patience, and do not neglect the balance that life requires. When we honor these lessons, we find not only renewal, but also a deeper harmony within ourselves and with the world around us. The new moon has always been regarded as a period when beginnings take shape, a time when what we choose to focus on can carry into the future. And like the full moon that emphasizes culmination and completion, the new moon marks the starting point of a fresh cycle, and with it comes an important warning. The thoughts we carry, the intentions we set, and the choices we make during this time are powerful because they plant the seeds of what is to come. Just like a farmer carefully selects the seeds to sow in fertile soil, we too must be mindful of what we nurture in our minds and hearts. The warning of the new moon is that careless thoughts and unresolved emotions can just as easily take root as positive intentions, shaping the reality that unfolds ahead. It calls for responsibility in the way we handle our inner world, for what begins in silence often grows in strength over time. Traditions across cultures have recognized this power and have encouraged people to use the new moon as a time for setting intentions. Many spiritual practices involve rituals where individuals focus on what they want to achieve or change, writing down goals, praying for guidance, or simply reflecting in silence. These actions are not empty gestures, but ways of aligning personal energy with the natural rhythm of the moon. The absence of moonlight symbolizes a blank canvas, and whatever we choose to place on that canvas becomes the starting point for the cycle ahead. The warning embedded in this practice is clear. Be cautious of what you place there. If you allow negativity, anger, or despair to dominate your mind, those emotions will shape the path forward. If instead you focus on hope, courage, and growth, then the new moon becomes a time of empowerment. This period is also symbolic of release, for in order to plant new seeds, we must first clear away the old. The new moon is not only about what we begin, but also about what we let go of. The warning here is against carrying unnecessary burdens into the next phase of life. Old grudges, painful memories, and unresolved conflicts act like weeds in the soil, preventing new growth from flourishing. The new moon reminds us to pull out those weeds, to cleanse ourselves of what weighs us down, so that the seeds of positivity can thrive. Without this release, even the best of intentions struggle to take root. This is why the new moon is often considered a sacred time of renewal, where closure and beginnings intertwine. Science, too, offers a reflection of this symbolic lesson. Just as the new moon creates a tide of energy on Earth, affecting oceans and ecosystems, so too can it affect the emotional tides within us. The moon's cycles remind us that nature is interconnected, and what happens in the sky mirrors what happens in our lives. The warning is not mystical alone but practical. If we remain unaware of the importance of beginnings, we risk moving forward without direction. Every cycle of the moon is an opportunity to begin again, but only if we choose wisely. In everyday life, this lesson can be applied in countless ways. At the start of a new project, relationship, or personal journey, the thoughts we hold shape the outcome. If we begin with doubt, negativity, or impatience, those qualities can seep into the results. If we begin with clarity, discipline, and optimism, we create a foundation for success. The new moon is simply a reminder of this truth, magnified by nature itself. It is a warning that beginnings matter, that the energy we set in motion at the start has the power to carry us forward for weeks, months, or even years. The stillness of the new moon also emphasizes the importance of mindfulness. In the quiet, when the sky is without its familiar glow, there is space to notice the patterns of our own minds. The warning here is subtle but powerful. Without awareness, we may unconsciously allow harmful patterns to repeat. The new moon invites us to break those patterns, to consciously choose a different path, and to trust that what we nurture now will bear fruit later. It tells us that nothing is too small to matter. Even the quietest of intentions, if tended carefully, can grow into something remarkable. The new moon, therefore, serves as both a gift and a responsibility. It gives us the chance to reset, to begin anew, and to release what no longer belongs. But it also warns us to be deliberate, for the seeds planted in this darkness will shape the light to come. What we choose to think, feel, and believe in these moments has the power to guide the path ahead. The darkness of the new moon is not emptiness but potential, and how we engage with that potential determines what kind of reality will unfold. The new moon has always carried with it a message of release, an invitation to let go of the past in order to make space for what lies ahead. Unlike the full moon that illuminates the sky with brightness and emphasizes completion, the new moon is shrouded in darkness, symbolizing emptiness and potential. In that emptiness lies a reminder that life constantly asks us to move forward without the weight of old burden. The warning that comes with this phase of the moon is clear. If we cling too tightly to what no longer serves us, we risk being held back from new opportunities that are waiting to emerge. Just as a tree sheds its dead leaves to make room for fresh growth, we too must learn the art of release. This release is not a sign of weakness, but of wisdom. For only by letting go can renewal truly begin. The new moon represents a cycle that has ended, but it also whispers of the cycle that is about to begin. In between the ending and the beginning lies a moment of pause, a sacred silence that allows us to examine what should remain and what must be left behind. Carrying unresolved pain, grudges, or fears into a new phase of life is like trying to plant seeds in soil that has not been cleared. The old weeds choke out the possibility of new life. This is why so many traditions and cultures view the new moon as a time of cleansing. People would use it to reflect on their mistakes, forgive themselves for what could not be changed, and release bitterness toward others. The act of release created room for something better to take its place. Without it, the cycle would simply repeat itself, trapping individuals in the same patterns again and again. The darkness of the new moon carries with it a symbolic message of trust. In the absence of light, we are asked to believe in what we cannot yet see. To let go is often difficult because it requires faith that something new and better will come. The warning before the new moon is not to fear this darkness, but to embrace it as the space where transformation happens. Just as the seed must rest unseen in the soil before it sprouts, our growth often begins in silence in moments when we feel most uncertain. Letting go of what no longer belongs is an act of courage, one that prepares the ground for the future. By resisting release, we deny ourselves the chance to grow into who we are meant to be. Letting go during the new moon does not always mean grand gestures. Sometimes it is as simple as choosing to forgive a hurt that has been carried for too long, or deciding to end a habit that no longer aligns with who we are becoming. It may mean stepping away from a toxic relationship, releasing fears that hold us back, or letting go of expectations that weigh us down. Each act of release creates a ripple effect, clearing emotional, mental, and even spiritual space for renewal. The warning that comes with the new moon is that without this act of clearing, our beginnings are compromised. We cannot write a new story on a page that is already filled with old words. Even in the natural world, we see this principle reflected. Rivers must flow freely to remain alive. If blocked, they stagnate. Forests grow stronger after shedding what is no longer useful. The cycle of life itself demonstrates that release is not an end, but a preparation for new life. The new moon is a mirror of this eternal truth. Its darkness is not emptiness, but potential waiting to be realized. The warning tells us that clinging to the past out of fear or comfort will only keep us from experiencing what the future has in store. Renewal requires surrender, and surrender begins with release. For those who honor the lesson of the new moon, this phase becomes a gift of clarity. It gives permission to lay down the burdens that have been carried too long and to step into the next cycle with freedom. It reminds us that carrying anger, regret, or fear into the future only dims the light that is to come. The new moon encourages us to embrace the wisdom of nature, that letting go is not loss but transformation, and that every ending clears the way for a new beginning. By respecting this cycle, we find strength in release, courage in surrender, and hope in the promise of renewal. The new moon is often misunderstood because its darkness can feel unsettling, yet within that darkness lies one of its most powerful messages. It is not an ending but a beginning. Unlike the full moon, which radiates light and symbolizes completion, the new moon disappears from view, leaving the night sky bare and silent. But this disappearance is not emptiness, it is potential. It reminds us that just as the moon will soon reappear and grow brighter, so too do our own lives move in cycles where moments of stillness and quiet prepare us for growth and renewal. The warning before the new moon is not to misinterpret this darkness as a void, but to see it as a fertile space where new possibilities are taking shape. What seems invisible is not gone. It is simply waiting for the right moment to emerge. In life, darkness often feels like uncertainty, and uncertainty naturally brings fear. We tend to associate clarity with safety and the unknown with risk. Yet the lesson of the new moon is to embrace the unknown as a beginning rather than an ending. When we enter new stages of life, whether starting a new job, beginning a relationship, moving to a different place, or exploring a new idea, we rarely see the full path ahead. It feels like stepping into the dark. But just as the moon returns, gradually growing in brightness, our path becomes clearer as we move forward with patience and courage. The warning here is that if we fear the darkness too much, we might refuse to take the first step, missing out on the growth that could follow. The new moon teaches us that the unseen is not something to run from, but something to trust. This cycle of renewal can be found in every aspect of nature. Seeds begin their journey in darkness, buried in soil where no one can see them. Only after time, care, and patience do they emerge into the light. In the same way, ideas, dreams, and changes in our lives often begin quietly, without recognition, and without immediate results. The new moon mirrors this truth. It assures us that just because something is not yet visible does not mean it is not real. The warning is not to dismiss silence or invisibility as stagnation. True growth often happens behind the scenes, hidden until the right time to emerge. By trusting the process, we allow new beginnings to take shape without rushing or doubting them. Embracing the darkness of the new moon also encourages us to find strength within ourselves. Without the light of the moon to guide us, we must look inward, relying on our own inner compass. This is a reminder that beginnings often require self-reliance and courage. Others may not see or understand the path we are stepping onto, just as the moon cannot be seen in the sky during its dark phase. But the absence of external light challenges us to create our own. The warning is that if we rely too heavily on external validation or visible proof, we may falter in these early stages of growth. The new moon asks us instead to trust our inner wisdom and to know that even in darkness, the journey has already begun. This perspective also changes the way we view endings. Too often, we fear endings as if they mean finality. Yet the new moon shows us that endings are simply part of the cycle of beginnings. Just as the old lunar cycle fades into darkness before the new one begins, our own endings make room for new opportunities. The warning here is not to cling too tightly to what has already completed its course. Holding on to the old prevents the new from taking root. By embracing endings as natural and necessary, we create space for beginnings that can only come in the silence of release. The new moon's darkness, therefore, becomes a symbol of hope rather than despair. It tells us that life is always renewing itself, even when we cannot see it happening. Each cycle of the moon offers us a reminder that pauses and silences are not the end of the story, but the preparation for a new chapter. The warning is to respect these quiet beginnings, to nurture them carefully, and to trust that the light will return. When we embrace the new moon as a beginning rather than an ending, we align ourselves with the rhythm of nature, finding strength in its wisdom and courage in its promise of renewal. Renewal that will grow as the moon begins to shine again. The new moon reminds us that even in the darkest night, the promise of light and transformation is always near.